Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to On the Spot Motorsports Media. Tonight, we are going to have Derek Putnam join us. He is a writer for Sick the Mag. But before we get into that, we want to always show our commercials for everyone who support us first, and then we'll bring Derek on, and we'll get right into the discussion. So just bear with us just a few moments. We'll be right back.
Hey Tornado fans, this is Kurt Miracle of Miracle Automotive and Towing, proud sponsors of Tornado Football. I want to welcome you to beautiful Stark, Florida and David Hurst Stadium, and thank you for letting us be a part of this community. We're here for more than your automotive and towing needs. We're here to be part of Tornado Country. Go Big Red!
60 years of innovation, 60 years of attention to detail, 60 years of rigorous testing under race conditions is what makes ATI Performance Products great. ATI has been helping racers like you reach the finish line first. Today, we manufacture a wide range of high-performance parts that are track-tested and race-proven. We're passionate about performance, and that passion is what drives you to the finish line first. See everything ATI has to offer at ATIRacing.com.
Good afternoon again. Welcome everyone here. We got Derek Putnam joining us, and we're going to get into the discussion of Sick Week. Derek now is a writer for Sick the Mag. Derek, thank you for joining us this afternoon. I know you've had a real busy schedule here lately of getting ready for next week.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you having me on. Obviously, with the fact that it's not only a week full of fun, my second year doing it, but it comes through Gainesville Raceway. So it's a double positive for me, and I enjoy doing it, and I'm really excited about it. I'm sure it'll be a lot of fun. There'll be a lot of good stuff to talk about.
And I tell you, Derek, there's a lot of excitement that comes with this. We've got drivers all over the United States that haul their cars down, and they get ready for the long haul. You know, everyone has to drive their cars from track to track. There's no trailer in them, and that's what makes everything even better. And the help that people get along the way, you know, there's people that break down and other racers jumping in there and helping them out to help them get to the next track.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the interesting thing that I've talked about with a couple of people that have never done the kind of thing that you and I do, which is bracket racing, index racing. It seems to me like there is a lot of crossover between bracket racing and the drag and drive community. It's the whole idea of we're a family. I will give you my last blank to get you to the starting line. I would rather see you finish and me have no spares, and I wouldn't even know you from Adam at the beginning of the week, versus, you know, okay, I'm just worried about getting to the next stop and not worrying about people that are broken down on the side of the road and what have you. It really is a community. I mean, it's serious and it's specialized, but it's just like the racing family that you and I have grown up around, which is we're all in this together, which to me is great. And I think it's a big part of why it continues to grow, not just Sick the Magazine and Sick Week, but the drag and drive community as a whole. When you look back at the history of it and where it is now, and I'll get off subject here, but we'll, obviously a lot to talk about. And like you said, there's a lot of serious cars. There's a lot of daily drivers. There's a little bit of everything. So it's something that I think everybody can relate to. You'll find something that'll tweak your fancy and really get your motor going, so to speak.
Yeah, and one of the things I like to do, Derek, you know, here in the next couple of days, especially, you know, these cars are going to be running through my county as well, Bradford County and part of Union County. And, you know, I want to let the people know to get out there and get on the side of the road and watch these cars come by, because it's not very often that we see, you know, high 5-second cars to 6-second cars pulling trailers going from track to track. You know, usually no one even attempts that when their car is that quick because of the gearing and the heat that it produces for the motor and the transmission.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of strain, and the interesting thing is if you talk to most people, even the guys and girls that run 6 and 7 and even 8-second cars, they'll tell you that the real hard part, even though we think drag racing is hard on our equipment, and you get to a point where you're amazed, you go, oh my God, it still works, what have you, but the drag is not the big part of it. The street is what really beats on the equipment. There are people that'll drive cars that are 3 or 4 inches off the ground, and they'll hit a bridge that doesn't really have a whole lot of clearance on it, and it's got a big tabletop, and before you know it, they've skinned the whole bottom of the oil pan and the tranny pan. That's happened to competitors before, where they're sitting on the side of a road and some dude just walls up and comes in with a welder, and then they're sitting there welding the pans back together at 2 a.m. because they've got to be at the next racetrack in 5 hours.
Yeah, it is a really good thing to see, and I hope my community goes out. They're going to be traveling, I know, the back roads of Bradford County and coming through the Brooker area. And I just hope people get out of their houses and walk out there and just see these cars and root them all going to the next track. That's what we need.
Yeah, it's basically free entertainment for everybody that's along the routes. And the great thing about SICKWEEK is because Tom is an enthusiast and he really wants everybody to be involved in this. This is a community. This is an entertainment deal. And part of it that gets the small cities and the back roads and the real scenic stuff into it is people sitting by the side of the road watching the train of cars go by. Because let's be honest, if you go back 20 or 30 years, it wasn't uncommon to see this because a lot of the cars weren't as fast. People weren't worried about somebody slamming into them, so to speak, and you could really enjoy your car. But now it's like everybody's kind of disconnected from their car. Well, a lot of people are, and they're paying attention to their mobile devices and what have you. So you're almost afraid to take your car or truck out and actually have fun with it. So when something like this, where we're talking about probably in excess of 500 cars and trucks are rolling from one spot to the next, and what the route is, then sure, why not stake out a corner and pull out your lawn chair or hold out a sign that says do a trailer burnout, and you get to enjoy the experience for 3 or 4 hours, and it doesn't cost you a dime. It's free entertainment.
Yeah, I'm even reaching out to our local newspaper because I like them to go out there and take some photos. I think it's a neat opportunity for each county that those cars go through. And I tell you, man, he does a great job of, trying to find those scenic routes to go and stay off the beaten path. I think it makes it a whole lot more fun.
No, absolutely. And again, it's one of the things where for lack of a better way to explain it, as a regular racer, somebody who does it on a budget, the problem that you do run into with a drag and drive is it can be expensive. And I'm not just talking about the fact that you also have to take a week's off of work, and that's if you're going somewhere that it doesn't take you another day or two to get there. And that's part of the reason that even people like myself, Jason Rollins, Robert Simpson, just to throw a few names out there, have cars that could very easily do a drag and drive. It's the commitment of time more than anything else. And when you look at the expenses, it could very easily cost as much as us racing for an entire season at our local track. So it's tough to commit to, but I'm telling you, the expression that I always got told to me up until last year was, once you do it or once you experience it, you'll want to do it again. And I agree with that 100%. I'm not just saying that for job security. It really is cool to see how many different things are involved in making a drag and drive work.
And I tell you, Derek, I was really interested in doing it this year, and I even hopped on to try to make it, but everything was sold out in like 4.5 minutes, all the spots. Just goes to show you, the drive and drag thing is alive. There's a lot of people that are very interested in it. I watched a podcast last night with you. There's other drive and drag events that are coming up that's not a whole week long that will give people the opportunity of doing. So I'm very glad that, those opportunities are out there for people.
Yeah, and again, you talk about the fact that when it first started back in 2005 with Hot Rod Drag Week, that's the originator. That's who got the whole thing started. And again, if you consider the fact that, yeah, he's a corporate guy, he's been writing for a long time, but David Freiberger is an enthusiast, and he's the guy who started that. He's the guy that started the Hot Rod Pump Gas Drags. He's the guy who was behind Hot Rod Power Tour. So even though they are run by a corporation, the initial intent of the idea has spawned into where we are now. And if you look back 5 years ago, I want to say there was only 5 or 6 drag and drives. This year, there's 23. And that's crazy when you think about how much that's ballooned in a small amount of time. But again, the good part that comes out of this is when you look at Sick Week and the fact that it sold out in 9 minutes. And then you look at because it was so successful last year, that Tom added 2 more this year. He's doing one in June called Sick Summer that's going to go through the, I believe, Illinois and Indiana area. And that sold out in 3 minutes. And then he's going to do another one called Death Week out in Nevada and California, because nobody's really had one very successful out there. So he's going to give it a shot. But then there's all these little small ones. And we talked, like you said, we talked about that last night on a podcast. It's like, for some people, committing to a week is kind of difficult. So like, you could go to one, say, where it visits only 2 tracks, and you only have to commit 3 or 4 days. And if you get in that, and it's kind of like a cruise, if you take the small one and you really enjoy it, then maybe you'll do 7 days, or you'll commit to doing more than one. And the great part is there's so many different ones that you can really pick and choose what you want to get into. If one sells out, just jump into another one. And the other thing that I would tell you is, even if it sells out, get on the wait list. Don't wait around and him and haw and don't think, oh, I'll never get in. Because local racer Amber Matz actually got off the waiting list less than a week ago, and she's going to go out with her husband, Ben, and do the entire thing next week. And when she told me she tried to get in and it got sold out, and she was trying to think about whether to get on the wait list, and I told her, get on it, because people will drop. It may take a while, but especially with parts attrition now it is right now, you're going to get people that are going to wait until 2 weeks before the event, a week and a half before the event, and then they're going to start dropping, and people are going to start getting on there. And if you're ready, you can get on board and you can do it. You just have to have a flexible schedule.
Right. Well, we got another area racer that races out of Gainesville away, also Houston McLean.
Yep.
He's getting ready. Another
yeah,
racer.
Not just him too. The funny part is that I think from just participating in certain events where not only Houston McLean, but Brian Slow and Mike Cataline and Tony Gagnon and I'm not sure if his wife Sherry is going, but I know Tony from HP Tuners is going. And that's the kind of thing, like you said, when you look at the fact that when somebody actually creates an event where it's closer, it's easier for somebody to commit to. And it's also not in the middle of the racing season where there's so much going on and there's so much demand on everybody's time. It becomes easier to commit to it. For Houston, it was kind of, an extension of what his car already is. He's competed in streetcar-based classes, just never with the crews. Well, for somebody like him that has a shop, it might be a lot harder to say, I'm going to go to Drag Week, but it's in the middle of the United States, and I have to take off 2 days to haul up there and then 2 more days after it's done. And you got to think about customer cars and stuff. It's a lot easier when you're only leaving on Sunday and then coming back the following Saturday.
Right. Exactly. And I tell you what, what Mr. Bailey's doing, having other drive and drag events throughout the United States really takes a lot of pressure off of people. Well, I don't have to go do the one in Florida and go up to South Georgia. I can wait and do the one here in the West or the Midwest, and that's great things that he is doing for all car enthusiasts and drag racers. But I wanted to talk to you a little bit. How many miles? I know the event starts in Orlando. Do you know about how many miles that these cars are actually going to put on?
They've changed the routes a couple of times because, similar to some of the other ones I've looked at, you plot stuff out. You kind of look at how it would be good from a laid back standpoint, I guess is probably a good way of putting it. But the editor of Sick the magazine, Luke, is based just outside of Jacksonville. So him and Tom actually ran the routes, I'd say, about a week and a half ago. And then all of a sudden, You find road construction, you find certain things during certain times of day where you're like, yeah, no, this isn't going to work. And the thing that SICKWEEK separates itself from most other drag and drives, not putting anybody else down, but Tom always said, and he drives a 6-second car, so he knows this better than anybody. If you're going to drive 300-ish miles a day, that's going to wear on you. Even if you make one pass and it's good, by the time you've changed your car back over to drive on the street, and then you factor in probably 2 to 3 stops for gas and then another stop or 2 for a checkpoint, you've got a 5-6 hour ride on your hands. And now you're getting to the hotel at midnight to 2 o'clock, and it's, by the 4th day, it's not enjoyable. Right. So when he proposed the idea initially, he said, I don't want to drive more than 200 miles. Well, I think that when the initial idea got proposed, it was when, and I'm guessing here, I never fully spoke to him about this, but I think that he looked at it similar to a couple of other ideas that were pitched, which is if Palm Beach International Raceway was still around, you could have gotten from any racetrack to another one in less than 4 hours. So that's under 200 and I'd say 60 miles at most. So that's reasonable. That's not too bad. But once you get rid of Palm Beach, now you've got to go to the Panhandle or you've got to go into Georgia. So there's really no easy way to break up the fact that you've got a 5.5, 6 hour drive between South Georgia and Bradenton. Now, the difference that they're doing this year is unlike last year where it started and ended at Bradenton, which means you had to make the long drive from South Georgia all the way to Bradenton on the last day, which means now they're pushing the time that they start the last day back, which makes for a long day. They're doing it in the middle where it happens on Tuesday. Yeah, it happens on Tuesday because they go from Orlando to Bradenton. So that's not too bad. That's about 2.5-ish hours going regular speeds. So I would say around 200 miles, maybe a little less. So you go from Orlando to Bradenton, then you go from Orlando, then unfortunately you go from Bradenton to South Georgia. Now that's a straight shot up 75. There is no route. They don't tell you you've got to zigzag through, small towns because that would just make it worse. But the only stop because of that, to make it easier, the only stop is National Parts Depot and it's right off the interstate. So that makes it a little easier for them to deal with. And again, Tom is changing some of this stuff up because he wants it to be fresh. He doesn't want it to be stale. People are doing the same thing as last year. And that way it makes for different conditions, different days, different possible people that can come out and watch it. So if I remember correctly, I believe the mileage is just shy of 850 to 900. I want to say that's where they are. It's not quite drag week. It's not 1,000, but it's close.
Well, and, you don't want fatigue to settle in on these guys and girls that, that are racing down the track. You want them to be very alert at all times. And so you don't want to wear them out.
Right. Absolutely. It's, especially when you look at the fact that unfortunately, and this is the thing that I think the average public doesn't understand is, yes, you can, and it's been proven, the whole adage that started was, you can't make this car survive a drive. This is not a real street car, which leads into the bigger conversation of what is a street car versus what isn't. You may not agree with Tom Bailey's car looking like a street car because it's Lexan windows and it has no air conditioning and it's got big tires and what have you. But that car's gone 1,000 miles plus on drag week several times. It's done the stuff where it's proven it's a street car, but because of how fast it runs, parts attrition is something very real. You have to run the valves every day. You have to do certain things every day because it's not a jump in the seat, warm it up, and then get on the road kind of thing.
Exactly. So. Now, I'll tell you what, there's a long list of a lot of drivers. And, one of those that stick out that everybody knows Cletus.
Yeah, it's funny. You talk about the fact that drag and drives, a lot of them don't even pay anything. It's really getting back to the idea of we're doing this for the fun of it. Or as Tom says, for the adventure. If you want the G-rated version, if you want the R-rated version, you can buy that shirt too. But it really is about that. It brings you back to the days when you used to go to the racetrack because you just wanted to go make passes and have fun. That was what this was designed around. And for somebody like Cletus, when you look at how much money he's probably spending to send 2 cars on a drag and drive with, the parts attrition, the fuel he's going to burn, the 2 sets of hotel rooms everywhere. But he's doing it because it's what he got started with. He's an enthusiast, and he's slaving away right now. He's got 1 car done and the other one is not even put together. It's a fresh build. And I don't know if he's going to make it in time. It's coming down to the wire.
Yeah, I tell you, the talk about Cletus, he done a wonderful job down there in Manatee County, trying to save those tracks. They had a house developer that wanted to build a lot of houses down there around Bradenton and the Freedom Factory, and I appreciate him going up in front of those county commissioners there and fighting it to keep those tracks alive. Like you said, he wants to hand down the Freedom Factory to his son, when he's ready to retire. And they were talking about just putting up a wall. And we all know a wall's not going to keep the sound from echoing through the neighborhood. And with his efforts, the county commissioners, they all agreed those tracks are not going to go anywhere. So
yeah, and to even go one step beyond that, the interesting thing is that when you think that because of all the money, and let's be honest, you should consider looking at this both ways, which is, as much as you and I don't want any more tracks in the state to go away, for any elected official or any county or city, they can't ignore how much tax revenue all those houses are going to bring. That's never going to get equaled by just a racetrack. But to be fair, you have to kind of expand it and be able to at least look at it and say, okay, it's not just the track. You have to look at hotels and businesses and restaurants and all these things that are around that make things happen. And they're all going to be affected when a place gets closed down. Like when Palm Beach International Raceway got closed down, there's people that are talking about the fact that their businesses got cut in half or 3/4 because the next closest track is 2 hours away. Now, for Cletus's case, when it comes to the housing development, he walks in there, has all his ducks in a row, got lots of information, and pretty much goes in there and lays the smackdown like Stone Cold Steve Austin and says, hey, you need to look at this beyond just the tax revenue. And then all the people, like you said, started talking about the fact that it needed to be saved. And now that development has actually proposed the idea of a racers village, quote unquote, where they don't think they'll have as big of a pushback to the noise. I don't know if it'll really work and if it's just, smoke and mirrors, but at least it was a response. Right.
And the way the commissioners talked, I hate to get off subject, but this is, to me, it's kind of important. The commissioners are all for about preserving that, where no other commissioners that come after them can change it. So I was wondering if they were thinking about trying to make it like historical sites that cannot be touched. And that would be a totally great thing.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I was actually just down there for the DCT, Dual Clutch Transmission World Cup last weekend. It is, I don't want to say sad, but it is. I've been going to Bradenton since, I want to say 92. And granted, I don't have the experience versus, say, people like Jason Rollins and his family who grew up racing there because they used to live in Fort Myers, which is an hour away. But every time I drive down there, and I've been 3 times in less than a year, every time I go down there, there's more and more development that just keeps pushing closer to that racetrack. And you do have to sit there and wonder, because I've watched Miami Hollywood go through it, where they just kept building houses closer and closer. And Bradenton already has a curfew, so that's been in effect for a while. So how long is it going to take before somebody says, oh, I signed that piece of paper, but I can challenge it in court that says I don't want to live this way, and they get enough people behind them that, are environmentalists or just want to live peacefully or whatever. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to look at for our sport, but I don't know if you could really actually stop it, because it becomes how are you going to stop somebody from selling something to retire, or they don't have a kid to take over a business, or they don't want to keep farming the land anymore? I don't know. It's
Right.
we can sit here and contemplate all kinds of different ideas.
Yeah, we definitely don't need any more tracks to close here in the state of Florida.
Yep. No, I agree.
Billy said, how can we get a route coming to Gainesville? Well, it actually is. It's going to come down. They're get on to 24. They're going to go all the way down to Sunny's. This is the way the map was. I guess it's still that way. They're going to go to Sunny's. They'll come back around, and they'll go back out toward Gainesville Raceway. So there will be a portion that will come into Gainesville. So you want to set up somewhere out there by the airport, Sunny's parking lot, any of those areas, you'll be able to see the cars come through. And actually, that's my plan, is take a little break from work, hopefully get out there, take a lot of pictures and some videos of the cars coming by so I can post it up on the page. But they will come through that way and go back to the track.
Yep. So the easiest way to find the directions, and I think that Luke, our editor, is probably going to update these as necessary, but I think that they're pretty locked in at this point. But if you go to sickthemagazine.com and you click on events on the top tab and then go to SICKWEEK 2023, which is the first choice, if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see that there are 4 different route buttons. And basically each one, like you said, is going to detail the routes. Some of them were, depending on, like, say, for example, if you open them from a mobile device, they may take you to Google Maps, but then I think they also have a PDF direction listing. So like you said,
right,
the biggest thing that they went ahead and did was they gave a couple different options on day 3. They said either the original Sunny's location, which is on Waldo Road, not far away from the racetrack, I'd say less than 10 minutes, or you can go to KSR, Kevin Smith's shop, since that's not far away from there. And that gives the people a choice of where they want to go. But it tells you the exact locations that they're going to turn, how far they're on each street. So, yeah, you could very easily pick a spot and just go out there and check out all the cars and trucks rolling by from South Georgia to Gainesville.
Yeah, and Billy, if you're really looking for probably a really good spot, if you don't mind driving to Brooker, there's a gas station there, and those cars are going to come right by that gas station.
So, it looks like the first one, let's see, where are we here? It doesn't say what city it's in, but it says there's a place called Billy Bonds, and I don't know where that is. I'm assuming that, based on the mileage, that you are just out of South Georgia, because it looks like it's a total of about 60 miles. So it looks like you're not too far. You're not even half. I would say you're probably a little more than halfway.
That might be somewhere around Jasper.
If I was going to take a guess, yeah. I mean, again, they're trying to take you down some of these 2- and 4-lane roads that go through the country, because, to be honest, it's a twofer. It allows people to see other competitors out on the road, and honestly, it makes for great photo opportunities. It gives some of the older people like us a chance to reminisce about how it used to happen, and it gives the younger generation a chance to see cars more than, hey, I saw one every 10 minutes. You'll right. see sometimes a whole line of them that come by at once.
Yeah, it's a really great experience. Also, another racer that's going to be participating, and she has been on Hot Rod Garage, and that's Alex Taylor.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Alex does. I just did an article on her not too long ago, and I don't know how she does it. I mean, she's probably, I would say, right up there with Cletus as far as her career has really taken off, and it's great because it's something that obviously her and her dad really enjoy doing. But she's got so much going on right now that it becomes, okay, is it gonna work? Because she debuted the 55 Chevy 2 years ago, did relatively well with it per se. It was nowhere near its potential. Then last year at SICKWEEK, she ran a couple of 7-second passes, including, I think, a 7:31, which is pretty fast for that car with the aerodynamics it has. But then ended up having issues and didn't even make it to day 4. So she dropped out. Later in the year, she finally ran in the 6s, but it was in testing. She didn't do it on a drag and drive. And she placed, I want to say, 3rd at Hot Rod Drag Week. So it's been kind of it debuted well, so it made it look like maybe it was going to be okay, especially when you consider that the motor that's in that car came out of her dad Dennis's Retro Nova, and he ran that for a few years. Well, now it's in her car, and they've changed a few things around, and she's had to overcome some transmission issues because, again, the weights are different, the aerodynamics are different. Her dad's car going 780s, 790s, and she tried to run 6s. There's a big difference there. But not only couple all that, but then look at the fact she's trying to run her own business. She's now taping episodes of Hot Rod Garage, so she's out in California, so she doesn't have the same amount of time she used to 2 years ago to dedicate to it. Right. So I'd love to see her do well, and I think based on our conversation that she's encouraged and pretty enthusiastic and optimistic. But, who knows? I mean, she could have something freak happen, or she might make it all 5 days and lay down really good runs every time.
Now, you speak of her 55.
Mm-hmm.
There's another person, Scott Brown. He's got a 53 Chevrolet Bel Air. And I tell you what, that is one cool ride right there.
There are a lot of, if you like sleepers or cars that really don't look like they're going to run as fast as they should, Dragon Drives usually have at least a dozen or so of those in spades. There's stuff that shows up that runs in the 7s and the 8s that you wouldn't even think would be anywhere close to it. There's some of these cars where, me being the way I am, I always liked a one-color paint scheme with no stickers and what have you. There's a Fox Mustang. I actually got to remember the guy's name. Hang on a second, because I have it written down. Jeremy Howell. He's running stick shift, so that makes it even better in my opinion. It's got a late model Shelby GT350 flat plane 5.2 liter motor in it, and it's gone 730s with a stick. And I guarantee you, if you took the stickers off this car, other than the big tires, you would not think that this car would go 730s. I mean, granted, the Mustang can't really be very deceiving, but it doesn't look like a 7-second car.
We always know looks could be very deceiving. Now, I'll tell you something that was really funny, and this was years ago when actually, was it GTR? No, it wasn't GTRs. It was, oh, shoot. I can't think of the car anyway. It's a 4-wheel drive, and it comes out there to Gainesville, and it's got a parachute on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and everybody's just laughing at this, 4-cylinder car with a parachute on it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he goes out there and goes around the water box, does his little burnout, all-wheel drive burnout, goes up there and pops it and goes down there and runs a 925. And everybody shut up really quick.
The sad part is doing the DCT World Cup last weekend at Bradenton, which used to be the GTR World Cup, but then because the DCT transmission started getting used in more and more stuff, they renamed it this year. And there is some stuff out there that is absolutely brutal. There are purpose-built GTRs that still have the all-wheel drive system in them. I think one of them went 680 at 209 this past weekend, and then there are street versions of them that are going in the 7s, and I mean 730s to 750s at near 200 mile an hour with plates and everything still on them. And the only thing that really gives them away, those, and you'll see Porsches and Lamborghinis also that are all-wheel drive, and it's an absolute mind screw. They have bead-locked wheels at all 4 corners.
Right.
And it's weird to see, but but when you see them like sit down and like the front's trying to grab and it actually creates a wheelie, like there's actually video out of, I forget who was driving the car, but it was a white GTR, and it went like 743 at almost 200 miles an hour. And it did like a mid-track wheel stand because the front end is trying to grab so much, but the weight's transferring backward. And meanwhile, now there's an in-car video of it out there where you can see them sawing away at the wheel, and you're like, oh my God. And they never got out of it. And they made the whole pass. And I guarantee you could probably drive it out the gate. Nobody would even think twice about it.
Yeah. And it was actually an Evo. It was an Evo that was out there at the track.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It's, the interesting thing is that the drag and drive thing as a whole is kind of never really been well attended by imports. Now that's starting to change a little bit. Tom Bailey has a class. It's called what's it called? It's called Street Freaks, and it's basically designed around import stuff and diesels. And it kind of gives them a class to play in, so they don't get lumped in with, say, 7-second and 8-second big tire cars in the case of the diesels. Like, because there's one guy by the name of Jesse Harris who runs an old school C10 pickup truck with a diesel in it that's gone like bottom nines. And you sit there and think about how much that thing weighs and the aerodynamics of a brick, and yet it's still running that fast, which would run away and hide from almost every model muscle car that hasn't been touched that's still available today from the showroom floor. And that's just crazy when you think about that.
Yeah, it is.
So, but there are some imports. There's not too many, but there are a few. Like, for example, PFI Speed and the Boosted Boys will be bringing cars out to SICKWEEK. And they also usually do stuff with Rocky Mountain Race Week. But when it comes to Hot Rod Drag Week, and Freiberger has thrown this out there before, he's like, where's the imports? The only one that ever really took that seriously was the Real Street car that had run in the sixes, but on a very well-prepped surface. It was a built Supra. I want to say he competed for 2 years, but he never got it as fast as you would thought because, again, the track prep for a drag and drive is normally not as good as a standalone event like an FL2K or a World Cup or what have you. Now, Tom, again, having a low 6-second, 5-second car, said, nope, we're not going to do that. We're going to not only run when the temperatures and the atmospheric conditions are good, but we're going to hire a crew to go to every racetrack and make sure that every racetrack is as close as we can possibly get it. And because of that, last year, we had the first 2 cars that ever ran a 6-second average on a drag radial. It had never been done before. And then we had several people that set personal bests, including a guy who broke into the sixes at Gainesville, ironically, Sean Fink, with a 55 Chevy.
Yeah, and I wanted to talk a little bit about Steve Morris. And I actually want to flash up some pictures of Steve's car.
Yeah, the Boostmaster wagon.
It's a bad, bad boy.
Yep. Now, for those of you that may have been around heads up and drag radial racing, Steve Morris, who owns Steve Morris Engines, who also built the engine that's in Tom Bailey's car and in Cletus's Mullet El Camino. He built both those engines. That car used to be a completely stock suspension, small tire radial car back when radial tire cars ran in, I want to say, the mid 4-second range, like back when the Revolution first started.
Right.
And then he kind of pushed it to the side and didn't do anything with it. And he decided to really get serious with it and debuted that car last year at SICKWEEK. And I think he ran, I want to say, like a 682 at like 212, which, considering that car weighs 3,600 pounds and is still all steel, is crazy.
It is. And I tell you, he had a little bit of bad luck here just recently, being down there Fuel Tech on the dyno, and ended up blowing a transmission.
Yeah, he may, and I actually just put a story up about this. I decided for today's evening story that I would put up some updates, and the car made north of 3,200 horsepower on the hub dyno, and then broke the transmission. So he actually texted me yesterday. I'm guessing he's probably going to have a fresh video up in the next day or two. But he contacted Rossler. They're supposed to be fixing that, and he is either in Bradenton already or he should be there tomorrow to start testing it. Because up until now, I want to say, especially with him being from, I believe he's from Michigan, he hasn't tested that car in a while. But that car's been 650s in testing in the middle of the year last year.
Hey, and it's better to blow the transmission there and be able to get another one ready to go in it instead of it happening on the side of the road.
Absolutely.
So, a little bit of a blessing at the same time,
Yeah.
A little expensive.
Yeah. The funny part is that SICKWEEK used to be the everybody show up and let's see how good your stuff handles. And now it seems like don't get me wrong. I mean, 8s are still fast. I'm not saying they're not. But you've even got people that are in Bradenton right now that are testing with 7- and 8-second cars. and they want to make sure that their stuff is good because, again, if they break, say, yesterday or today, okay, let's go find a speed shop and let's fix this, or let's find a local racer and see if I can buy their blank to fix mine. So that's kind of what's happening is everybody doesn't want to leave it to chance anymore and just show up on Sunday and pray it stays together because there's so much, like granted, again, when there was only 4 or 5 of these, I think it was a little more dramatic. You didn't want to go into something going, if I screw this up, I've got to wait a year or I've got to wait 6 to 8 months before I can try it again. Now it's okay, well, if I blow it up, there's another one in April, so I can go run that one, or there's another one in May and I can go run that one, so I don't know. I mean, I personally would test the crap out of mine before I would get it down there because I wouldn't want to leave it to chance.
Well, I know we were speaking about Houston McLean a while ago.
Yes.
And he actually took his on a road trip.
Mm-hmm.
I think he personally drove it all the way down to Orlando and back, just to make sure everything's good, everything's in great running order. So I mean, I imagine there's a lot of people that have decided, hey, I'm going to go ahead and put 400 miles on this car this weekend, get it back to the house or to the shop, look through it, make sure everything looks great right before Sick Week.
Mm-hmm.
Give the car a really good shaking down.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the whole, I mean, I hate to say it because I grew up running True Street where it was 30 miles and then you did back-to-back runs at whatever track you were at. And yeah, it's not the same as driving it a couple 100 miles, but at the same time, when you also have the evening over to be able to look through everything versus going right into the racetrack and running, you're looking at 2 completely different sets of rules. But the biggest thing is, if you drive at, say, 30 to 50 miles, you're really not going to see the same stress on the transmission and the motor and heat and fuel. And, is the fuel boiling? Do you have a percolation issue? Do you start to have drive shaft vibration as things get thin because they're hot, from the fluids? That's the kind of thing where it's not becoming uncommon nowadays when you're, I've been seeing updates all week on Facebook and on Instagram where people are, like you said, they're taking their stuff out and beating it on the road. And there's a guy named Richard Guido who's driving his car 4,000 miles down to Florida from Canada. And he did that last year. And it's like, okay, you just making it to the racetrack is an accomplishment in itself.
Right. Exactly. Now I have another car that I wanted to post up, and you probably know whose car this is.
Yeah, this is Tina Pierce, who
yes
has done very well in multitudes of drag racing. She did no prep for a little bit, as far as she was on Street Outlaws back when it was, in its heyday when it first got started, and she was running a different car. I forget the car that she started with, but then after she did that, she moved to a small GM pickup truck, and I want to say won at least 2 to 3 times on Rocky Mountain Race Week. And then her and her husband, David, who has a 68 Camaro at one point, I don't know if he still has it or not, they both did drag and drive stuff. And they built that car, and that car got shook down and taken to, I want to say, Miles of Mayhem right before PRI. And the car was at PRI. And I had a chance to talk to her, and she said she hadn't done as much drag and drive as she used to, and she was really looking forward to it. And like you said, she's towing from the Oklahoma area, so she doesn't have a short drive either.
Right, and she done a lot of things on Street Outlaws as well.
Correct. Yep. So it was one of those deals where I think it's interesting again to see who is spilling into this not new, but because it's becoming more and more explosive, there's more areas to try it. I mean, there's even a drag and drive that's a week long in Canada now too. And I wrote a story about this. There's a guy who is bringing a 1973 Toyota Celica with a boosted LS motor that's been almost in the 6s. He's driving that thing down from Canada. What's going on with the Volvo guys in Sick Week? Jerry, that's a good question. So I'm assuming he's talking about Mikkel Borgren, who unfortunately has had some issues. I have not publicly stated anything about it. He gave me the clearance to do so, but that car is not together and running as of yesterday. It was, and then it made it to a dyno, and then it wasn't. So I don't know if he's going to get it back together in time. He said he's thrashing on it. So
now
that class is going to be interesting because he was one of the two guys that ran in the sixes last year on radials and finished second to Rick Prospero, the guy with the green RX-7, who is not competing at Sick Week this year. But if you take a further step back, and that's the modified class, Cletus was in that, and he averaged, I want to say, 750-ish, and I think he was sixth place. But that was also his last drag and drive he did with the LS motor. Then he puts the Steve Morris motor in it, and he's now been 640s. So it'll be interesting to see how he does this year. And he announced on one of his videos today that he's bringing Pete Harrell, the guy who came up with the really nasty tune-ups for it to get it to run as fast as it has, down to be his co-pilot. So he's obviously not joking around this time. He really wants to win. So we'll see how that all plays out.
And, you bring up Pete Harrell. I mean, he's very well known in the drag racing community with his work with Lyle Barnett with Beer Money. He's been very active with him and with that grudge car. So,
yep. Also tuned on Grant Guthrie's truck, the first truck to run a 3-second pass full size. So yeah, Pete he's the same way. He's a very hardworking individual, owns Herald Engine and Dyno up in, I want to say, North Carolina. And he's, like you said, he's got his thumbprint in a lot of areas. He's even worked with Mike Finnegan on his jet boat a couple of times.
Yeah, very, very, very popular guy and a great tuner.
Absolutely.
Now, Tibbs is entering his pro mod.
That's a very interesting story. Yeah.
That is pretty wild, to watch this pro mod, go from track to track on the road. It's going to be a very interesting story. And I tell you what, I hope that they are able to make it to every track without any big issues in between, because I think that is just something awesome.
So the fact that you bring up Lonnie Tibbs, the thing to me that just is an absolute mind screw is when the first Sick Week happened last year, and I'm walking through the staging lanes looking at cars before I went up to the booth. Here's the car that he brings the first time. It's an ex-Bracket Cars 34 Ford Street Roadster. And I'm like, you are not going to take that on a track and drive. Because he's telling the 1320 video guys that what he thought he could do with it versus what he actually was able to do with it because of the way the body's designed and the frame wasn't reinforced to hold a trailer hitch, and where was he going to put the spare tires and whatever. But he at least attempted it. So the funny part is, as a pro mod, almost seems like a step back. It almost seems like a safer deal. But yeah, he just got this pro mod in November, and he's been throwing it together between two different engines and trying to get it wrapped and trying to get it wired and what have you. And it was an original PDRA Outlaw 632 car. So it ran mid to low fours in the 8th mile. And the cool part is he's having it changed up just enough to where it's going to look like a Mercedes. It's going to look like a 300 SL car based on the wrap. And it'll be interesting to see if it hangs on, if it actually does pretty well, because Tom Daly's car is a pro mod. It's a complete carbon fiber Camaro, and it's done fine. So I don't think it'll necessarily make waves because it's not the first one to do it, but it would be interesting to see if another one could do it.
Yeah, it'd be great. It might draw more of them out to attempt it.
Yeah, I think more and more people are finally figuring out what a lot of people used to do back in the 80s when, because, for example, the reason I think I identify with this deal is I didn't own a truck or trailer for the first 12 years I raced. So there were lots of times I changed tires in the rain at the racetrack when we got rained out. And I think that don't get me wrong, having a race car only isn't a bad thing, but there's lots of times where it's going to sit there and you're not going to do anything with it. Now, to be fair, on the flip side, if you're building a race car only, the insulation, the carpeting, the making sure all the bells and whistles work that you would need in order to drive it on the street, that adds weight to it, that's going to add strain to the engine and the transmission, so forth. You should consider looking at that, but I still love to have a dual purpose vehicle. That's just the way I grew up.
Yeah, and I tell you, well, I drive my car all the
Mm-hmm.
time. I mean, it's not extremely fast. It's can run low 12s, possibly could get in the high 11s if I put enough of nitrous to it. But
Yeah.
it's
Jerry
it's a
asking
lot
a
of
good
fun
question
to
there.
drive
Yeah.
it and drag race it.
Yeah. Jerry, the answer to your question is you need to go look at the latest story that I just put up, because I did put Cletus's last 2 videos up in the last story I wrote for Sick the Magazine. It just dropped about an hour ago. So you can go to sickthemagazine.com and click on the news section, and it's the top one. So he dropped a video on mullet, and then he did another one on the, what do they call it, the McFlurry Mustang. And they're trying to not only shove a Godzilla motor into it, which is, I want to say there's probably not more than half a dozen that I've heard of that have made drag strip passes, but they put a Bruno Lenko behind this thing. So there is no handbook for this. I'm not sure how they're going to make it work, but they're going to probably be burning the midnight oil to the end on that thing, because the Ruby Corvette is apart. There's no engine in it. I think they're worried about George's Blazer because that thing just keeps wheeling all the time. So they're worried about what that would do. And at that point, you're almost out of options. You don't really have anything else you can take, unless they say, for example, they took the turbocharged Ford pickup truck that they just bought, but that's probably a 9 or 10 second vehicle, and it's not going to grab the attention that most of their fleet would. So I'm sure they would like to finish the Mustang, but you got 3 days left. You're going to run out of time at some point.
Right. Now, there's another guy that's got a 6-second javelin.
Oh, yes. You must be talking about Brian
Goldstone.
Yep. And that car, ironically, almost was not still around. I mean, considering he at one point was going to junk that car, he wrecked it at Hot Rod Drag Week on the last day, I want to say in 2021. Might have been, no, they didn't compete in 2020 because of COVID. I want to say it was 2021. Now I almost want to go back and look at the news section because I actually wrote a story about it. But yeah, he put it on its lid at the top end of a pass, and it damaged it pretty badly. And because javelins are not easy to find parts for, he was considering like, all right, I'm done with this. I'll maybe build something else or whatever. And he's got I want to say a low 8-second, high 7-second 70 Chevelle that he raced in drag and drive for a little while before that car. And he put it back together. And then last year at Hot Rod Drag Week, it blew the carbon fiber door panel off of it on one pass. And they like electrical taped it all back together. I mean, like it was in pieces, probably 20, 30 pieces. And still managed to come back and actually finish.
I remember that. Yeah, I'll tell you what. These guys and girls, I mean, this is a lot of dedication. A lot of dedication in the shop, getting these cars ready and prep for a long week. And to be able to make it to all the tracks, like you said, that's accomplishment in itself, and to do very well is another great accomplishment. So you have to take those in steps. Is there anybody that you think that's really going to possibly stand out during Sick Week?
That's not an easy question to answer. I mean, let's put it this way. I have 2 pages of notes from yesterday just from trying to do the podcast because, with my new job and being the lead announcer for Sick Week and as well as Sick Summer and then Death Week later in the year, I'm really trying to get into this more than I already was. And my drag racing knowledge was it was hit and miss, but it was on a very wide spectrum. The drag and drive community for a whole, if you really start trying to dig into how much results there are out there, there's not a lot. So you have to really pay attention when they run them. So I was trying to do my homework. So here's what I would tell people to look at. If you are just interested in the pure excitement of trying to watch stuff happen, it's hard to not watch Unlimited Iron, or the modified classes. Those are going to be your three quickest classes. So Tom Bailey, who was leading leaving Bradenton in first place last year, broke his car and was non-repairable, so he dropped out. Stefan Gustafsson with the Swedish C4 Corvette ended up winning it last year. That car, ironically, was co-driven by a guy by the name of Eric Yost, who owns a business called Customs by Biggin in North Carolina, and he has a NASCAR-headed small block with a single turbo that has won Hot Rod Drag Week in its past, but he kind of pushed it to the side, got his business underway, started a family, and now he's bringing that car back for the first time in, I want to say, 6 years. And he said publicly he wants to be the first guy to have a 6-second average on drag radials and stock suspension, like leaf spring suspension. So the fact that he's going after it with a small block too is pretty interesting. And it's not an LS motor. It's an old school Gen 1 small block. So
wow.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if that happens. So he is, I want to say, either in Super Street or the modified category. Then you've got Sean Fink, who won Unlimited Iron, but that's the category that's going to have Steve Morris in it. So Morris, if he can get his stuff together, could very easily shoot up and win that class. In Unlimited, on the other hand, we've mentioned Lonnie Tibbs. We've talked about Tom Bailey. There's Alex Taylor. There's Nick Taylor. There's all these people that could be in the mix that have run either in the bottom sevens, upper sixes, and all it takes is for somebody to break, and you could see it happen. So those are the three classes as far as speed that I would look at. If you want to look at a class from an excitement standpoint, in my opinion, the two that are going to stand out are going to be the stick shift class and the Rowdy radial class, which is a 235 radial or a 26 by 8.5 slick, a very small tire. And a guy by the name of Alex Corella, who has won and done well on multiple Dragon drives. He was up in Gainesville earlier this year testing 235s. He bought them a year ago, never used them. Came out and won one of SICKWEEK's categories last year. Left the same tune-up in the car and had to make 4 runs before he could make it from A to B without shattering the tires or spinning. And every time he made the run, I went up and watched, and I'm like, is it the track? And he goes, no, it's my tune-up. He says, these tires are just so unforgiving compared to a 275, which is 28 by 9 or 9.5, depending on how you spread the tire. So eventually he got into, I want to say it was like the 123, 124, 60 foot, which is pretty solid for that size tire. But the thing that's absolutely mind-boggling is as good as that is, there's a guy named Rick Stunke with a 4-door Chevelle called Hawk of Parts Fall Off. He's been 508 in the 8th mile on a 235 tire, and he's done it for a few years. And then there's a guy by the name of Devin Vanderhoff who's gone 470s at 157 miles an hour on that same tire. So it's like, and it's an 8th mile class with no rules. It's a tire, and that's it. I mean, if Tom Bailey wanted to show up on a 235, he could enter that class. There's no minimum weight. There's no weight or body or rule restrictions. That's it. It just says you have to run this tire, and it's an 8th mile based class, and that's it.
The tire is the handicap.
Correct. So it is literally like almost a time machine back to when BF Goodrich came out with the first drag radial, like the first purpose-built drag radial that wasn't a soft DOT tire. And that was the handicap. You had 8 to 10 second cars running on this tire, and it was so unpredictable that they might run a 9-1 pass, and then they might spin, and the run's over the next pass. And then everybody jumped on the bandwagon, and drag radials got better and better. And so the tire being the limiting factor, yeah, it still exists to a point, but not on these really well-prepped tracks. The tire at that size isn't a restriction anymore. Ron Rhodes has gone 0.997 on a 60-foot on a small block nitrous Camaro with leaf springs on a 275 tire. That's ridiculous. That's within
crazy.
a tenth of a second of a pro stock car.
Yeah, that is crazy.
So I would say the two most exciting classes not on speed are going to be Rowdy Radial, the 235 class, and then the stick shift class, because stick shift is the same thing. It's totally unpredictable. The guy you got who's coming back is the defending champ, which is Richard Guido. He has a 65 GTO over 2 tons. It is a Pontiac, powered Pontiac with twins. It made I want to say just north of 1,400 horsepower at the tires, and he's driving that thing here from Canada. No truck and trailer, driving it here. So you've got him. You've got the guy with the flat plane crank GT350 powered Mustang that's gone 730s. I'm looking at some of my notes. You got Taylor Hedrick, who has a 2-valve Mustang that's been in the 7s. You've got a guy named Chad Fegley, who has a twin-turbo Corvette that's gone 780s. There's all these people in stick shift, and stick shift just keeps getting harder too. So I would say that and the 235 class are going to be the most exciting classes to watch, because you never know what's going to happen. Somebody could drop the clutch and spin the tires, or blow through the clutch. A 235 car can make a good pass one hit and smoke the tires the next. So you don't know what's going to happen in either one of them. It'll be exciting to watch.
Well, I'll tell you, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to go down to Orlando and Bradenton, but I will be out there at Gainesville and taking in some of the scenes and getting some pictures and stuff to post on our page. And I'm really looking forward to it. And hopefully I can get out there and get some photos of the cars coming down the roads lined up. I think this is just one of the neatest thing to see, a parade of drag cars with trailers being pulled behind them.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Like you talk about Houston McLean earlier a couple of times. Here's a guy who had a car all figured out and everything. And one of the biggest things that he's had to worry about, granted, he did rewire his car and do some things to make it a little bit more reliable and get some more data out of it. But then he had to worry about trying to figure out a trailer hitch and everything else, as well as building a trailer. And it's like, when your drag prep includes that, it's like, okay, wait, what?
I wish him, and I think he's still looking for some tires. I seen it yesterday. He had a post.
He is, yeah, and that's again, like we talked about earlier, the biggest issue that I see with drag and drive continuing to get faster and faster is how much is your combination going to be different than everybody else's. I hate to use the word LS swap, but the advantage of an LS swap is people blowing stuff up or breaking it is you can go to a you pull it yard and you can get heads. You can go to a you pull it yard and get an intake. But if you're running something as specialized as, say, like a Shelby GT350 motor, and you break something, you're not going to find it at every local, auto parts store, so to speak, depending on what it is. But yeah, the parts attrition thing, you saw Mike Cataline, jump in here. He's trying to do the same thing with his, and he's got a few last little minute check boxes that he has to take care of. And all it takes is one of those things to go wrong, and then your entire week is in the toilet and you can't do anything with it. And it sucks, because you look at all the effort that a lot of people put into this. And like you said, being on a wait list or getting on back in September, October, a lot of these people have been planning this for a while. And even if you're somebody like Cletus and you've been waiting for a transmission for 3 months, and that could determine whether you're actually going to be able to make it or not, or succeed in completing the week or not.
Right. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of pressure on a lot of these guys and girls getting ready. And the clock is ticking, because it's right around the corner.
Yep, like I put up today, there's 3 days to go, and I don't know, I can't remember off the top of my head what the exact cutoff is for Sunday registration. But if you're not in line by a certain time, it doesn't matter if it's hero status stuff or whatever, you're done. You don't even get to stage for day one. So, well, at least I take that back. You can run it. You can actually participate in the week. Just your times won't count. Like, you'll still get a time slip and you can run the route and what have you, but it won't count. You'll be DQ'd. So, and ironically, there are some other Gainesville / Florida people that you and I know that are trying to get on this. Kevin Roberts, I know, is on the wait list. I'm not sure if he's come off of it or not, because he wants to do it. Brian Carney with the really nice 67 Orange Nova. He's going to do it again this year, and I believe this is going to be his last year with the combination in that car that ran in the upper 8s, low 9s last year. I think he told me that he's going to change it up, and he's going to put a twin turbo setup on the car for next year. So it'll be interesting to see what he does with that.
I think Kevin Roberts actually got in because I believe I seen a post earlier today.
Yeah, maybe he did. Like I said, everybody just keeps, that's the problem is you for the longest time, I remember I had probably 6 messages that just kept circulating every week or two where everybody was like, hey, are they doing anything with the wait list? And I said, I'm sorry. I said, I don't have access to that, number one. Number two, I have no pull. If you really want to go, you need to be patient. And then all of a sudden you started seeing people post up on well, I can't get this finished. I'm running out of time. I'm going to drop out. And then somebody makes an excited Facebook post of, oh my God, I got in, and like I said, Amber Matz was one of those. She wrote me immediately and she was like, we're off a sick ward and we're actually going to get the race. And that's the alternative. If somebody still wanted to get in and do this, even if you can't drag race, the advantage that Sick Week has is you can do sick ward, which is the same exact thing, just no drag strip runs. But here's the benefit. It covers admission to every racetrack for you and a guest. It covers catered lunch at some locations. You get specific T-shirts designed just for you that nobody else can buy. And you get to park right up front by the staging lane. So you don't have to go parking in a spectator lot somewhere. So you feel like you get to do all the same stuff that a Sick Week participant that would be racing would. And in some cases, I've talked to people in years past that have done this because Rocky Mountain Drag Week has it too. And they've told me, they said, I did this because I wanted to see how it would go. I didn't want the stress of trying to race too. I just wanted to do the week and see how it went. And it's kind of like a trial run. And then if it works out well, you take the training wheels off and you do the whole thing next year.
Right. Yeah, and I think Robert Simpson, him and his dad, they're gonna travel. They're doing that portion of it.
Awesome, that's cool. So we'll see some Gainesville regulars out there. So I'm glad to hear that.
But I'm really looking forward, Derek. You've been doing a great job announcing out of Gainesville, and you're doing really good as a writer with Sick the Mag. I've been reading your articles, and I tell you, it's been a pleasure to have you on tonight. And I'm going to tell everybody, if you can't make it all the tracks, that's fine to spectate, but at least try to go and support this event. Go to Gainesville, go to South Georgia, go to Bradenton. And if you can't make it to a couple of tracks, great for you. Take in all the sights and the scenes of it. Nothing like a 6-sacket car driving in through the gate and running down the track.
Absolutely. Mike Crook, look forward to seeing you in Orlando. Another fellow bracket racer who will be working on making sure the track is prepped and everything's run as good as it can. And don't forget that if for whatever reason you're like me for so many years with Drag Week and you could never go to someplace in the Midwest and watch it, Tom Bailey is streaming the event for free on his YouTube page, thanks to Motion Raceworks, Doug Cook and his gang. So that is already up. If you go on YouTube and you search out Sick Week 2023, you'll see that there are already pre-done links with start times on when we'll start live streaming. And that'll be myself along with Warren Evans, who does a lot of NHRA stuff. He'll be running some of the stuff behind the scenes. And then we have Adam Dory and Don O'Neill joining our team this year. And they'll be trying to get some of the stories from the road, from the stops, from the pits, from the staging lane. So we're trying to get more interactive. We're trying to bring you more of what's going on besides what's just happening on the racetrack. So as I tell everybody, I'm a racer, I'm an enthusiast. So any constructive criticism or feedback is always welcome. Tom is the same way. We want to make this better for everybody that participates in it and watches it at home and, comes out to the track and watches it. So if you're not afraid to tell us what you think, but again, do so in a constructive manner, it'll make it better for all of us.
And I tell you, I will get those links and I will share them to the On the Spot Motorsports media page and try to share them to a few other drag racing pages on Facebook so we can draw an attendance online as well for people to watch.
Yep. Just remember, I'll try to have them up at certain events where we actually have a decent internet or decent Wi-Fi signal. So I believe, if I'm not mistaken, unless it slows down the broadcast, he should have live streaming where you can comment. And, you know me, I love to tell backstories. I love to be able to go beyond what's on the screen. So if you see your favorite driver out there running and you know a story about them, or you want to throw me a one-liner of something that is an interesting sidebar, because I mean, I don't know about every single competitor. That'll come with time. But if you know something about somebody, like, hey, this guy was tearing his engine apart until 4 o'clock in the morning on the side of the road, tell me. That's the kind of thing our audience wants to know.
Exactly. Well, I appreciate your time tonight, Derek. I know you've been very busy, and you're just going to get a little busier, unfortunately, over the next couple of days. And I'm really looking forward to Sick Week myself, stopping off there at Gainesville Raceway.
Yep. No, absolutely. Thank you very much for the invite. It's always good to talk to you, Mitchell. I do appreciate all that you're doing for not just, the racing and the enthusiast community as a whole, but all the stuff you do for Gainesville every week when you're out there. And, again, it's the same reason that this kind of stuff is expanding. It's people taking the opportunities that they're given, especially enthusiasts, and creating something out of it to get more people involved in our sport. And that's what we need every single year as we go forward.
Oh, yeah. And I'll tell you, I love it. I'll tell you some funny stories. I'll tell you one of them. It was this past weekend on Sunday, and I'm getting ready for, I think it was the quarterfinal round, and the phone goes off. So, hey, your live feed is not working. Like, sorry, I'm in the car. I can't do anything about it until I get finished running. And I said, I'll run it to the tower and I'll get it back up, which we all know, we have a little bit of an internet issue out of Gainesville, and it's not the track's fault at all. It's just one of those things. And got some good things in the future. I think they're going to be putting up a tower within like a half a mile from the track. And that right there is going to help out a lot with broadcasting, live streaming events there at Gainesville Raceway. And I tell you, when I first started off in this thing, it was on the spot with David Rogers, and always had a good time on that podcast. And I started bringing in, racers like Erica Anders. We've had Steve Johnson on, Josh Hart. And, it's a good show for local news and political views and what's going on. And I said with David, I says, hey, we need to take this and I need to form on-the-spot motorsports media. And I said, and that's the way that we need to go. We keep them, locked together on the spot, with that for the title. And I said, we go to the track to get away from politics and everything. And sometimes politics gets people's feathers ruffled in the wrong direction. And so that's why we formed this. And it's been great. I think we've into like our 9th month. We have grown over 3,000 followers. And it just keeps on going up and every day. And it is a little hectic at times trying to keep up with stories and get things posted and work a regular full-time job in the house life, but I wouldn't trade it for nothing in this world. I've always been a big lover for drag racing. I went out there at Gainesville one time. I skipped school, not telling any kids to skip school or anything, but I made a bunch of fellas. We skipped school and we went out there for the Gator Nationals, and I was hooked. That's all it took. One time going out there, and there's no other sport better than drag racing, especially when you bracket race. You're not always just racing the guy next to you. You're actually racing yourself, and you're having to be very consistent on a tree, and your car's got to be consistent in ET. So it's not easy. If it was easy, everybody would be doing it, right, Derek?
No, absolutely. Well, I don't know. I think I could just light the money on fire just as easily, but I will tell you that the great thing about not only bracket racing, but the racing family as a whole is it really can become like your family. There are a lot of people, whether you're at a test and tune or a bracket race or what have you, you will find a group of people that want to take you in and doing the same kind of stuff that you are. And that's what I think brings people back to this more than anything else is, yeah, the win lights are great. And if you're lucky enough to get a trophy or even a check, those are great too. But it really is the people that you can be around on a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday that really does make you look forward to your next trip. And like I said, the fact that you're able to help bring that to some people's homes that can't participate with us on a weekly basis is, it's something that, for me, I appreciate it because my son can watch it at home. My parents who aren't coming racing with me can watch it in West Palm. So I appreciate you doing it. And again, with so many tracks trying to run different schedules, so we're not on top of each other between Bradenton, Orlando, etc., there are more people watching from those tracks. So thanks for doing what you do, man.
Well, I do appreciate it. And, I really thank our track manager, Jody Kennedy, for allowing me that opportunity to do it. And I don't have no plans of quitting anytime soon. So, and we've already looking for better equipment. Just the other day, I think I spent almost $700 on a transmitter and a receiver, so we can put a track out, a camera down the track a little ways to give a better angle instead of trying to use a phone or another type of piece of equipment. And it's going to give a better image for sure. And so we'll be testing it this coming, not this weekend, but next following weekend at the bracket races. And hopefully it works out really good for us.
Yeah, go easy on me. When I show up on Saturday, I'll probably be a little tired after announcing for 6 days.
I hear you. Well, thanks again, Derek, for joining us. And I appreciated it as always. And I'm telling you, you got to get out there to the track and watch these guys and ladies drive their cars in and make their passes. It's really neat, very neat experience.
Everyone. And like you said, if not, and you have to want to be responsible and not call in sick, quote unquote, Tom Bailey, Bailey. That's where you need to go. He'll be live streaming it every single day, so you can watch all the stuff.
Well, I appreciate it, Derek.
Yes, sir. Have a great night, Mitchell. Always good talking with you.
Take care.
Yep. Have a good one.
And there goes Derek. So again, thanks everyone for joining in tonight with our discussion about Sick Week and everything that's going on. We are looking forward to our next podcast. Hopefully next Thursday night, we'll have another guest. And we always like to create an event page ahead of time and get that, sent out to everyone. Give you a nice little reminder. Hey, and if you're not a follower of On the Spot Motorsports Media, please click the little follow button. And every time that we go live, you'll get notification. So again, thank y'all for joining in and hope y'all have a great weekend.